Okay, so Sylvie brings up a really great point, and so does David. So David's talking about gaslighting, and Sylvie is talking about being overly sensitive. So, gaslighting, for those of you that are not familiar with the term, gaslighting it comes from a movie. I want to say this film has been remade several times. The film was also called Gaslighting. It was, I think, a 1944 Ingrid Bergman film. And in the film, it's she marries a murderer slash con artist, and the guys basically married her in order to get access to her aunt's home that he'd killed her aunt 20 years earlier. And the whole time he wasn't able to get this treasure that he'd killed the aunt for, and so he marries the niece to get access to the house. He's going there, he's trying to get this treasure, and while he is looking for it, because it's like up in the attic or something, every time he turns, and it's gaslighting because the movie's old, when they're turning the gas lighting, he's turning the lighting on, it's causing her lights downstairs to flicker. And during the whole movie, he keeps planting the seeds in her mind that she's crazy, that her reality is not real, that his reality is real. So he's planting things on her. He's moving objects around. He keeps telling her, "Oh, you're under a lot of stress. You're very ill. You're losing your mind. I'm really worried about you. I don't think I can handle this anymore. Why are you so crazy?" And she's not crazy. He's doing all of this stuff intentionally to slowly erode her sanity. So, because she had been catching on to his true identity. So a lot of emotional manipulators will do this gaslighting stuff, and it's because they don't want it. They've been caught for some sort of bad behavior. They don't want to admit to it, and so they're just flat out denying it. So, for example, if somebody gets caught, taking $20 out of your wallet, and again, because emotional manipulators, they lie, they lie, they lie, they lie, they lie when the truth would work better for them. They take $20 out of your wallet, and then if you ask them about it, they'll say no, that they never did that. It can be subtle like that, or it can be a lot more obvious, where you might have seen on their phone that they're getting texts from a certain person. It's like strange, like sexy texts from another person, and you ask them about it, and they're like, "What are you talking about? Nobody's texting me. Like, I think you're crazy. You're so paranoid. You're so jealous. What's your problem?" Like, and then they spin it around to where it's now your issue. That's psychological abuse, because it erodes a person's sanity. And unless a person's really experienced it, it's hard to even describe the effects of that, because they do tend to be long lasting, and it causes the person to have a lot of trust issues and paranoia and self-doubt and doubting their judgment, and it's awful. And a person doesn't have to experience a lot of gaslighting in order to feel really rattled by that. In my case, what I experienced with Jack, there wasn't necessarily a lot of like overt gaslighting. It was all kind of hindsight. I realized what was going on, but he had been lying about so many things. He had been introducing me to a lot of these people that he had been sleeping with. They were coming over to our house. He was introducing them as coworkers, as people, guests at this vacation property that he was working at. All kinds of things, but they weren't. It was all like the joke was on me. Everybody knew except me. And when I began piecing things together, it completely just eroded my sanity, and I couldn't figure out what really happened, like what really went on. And for years after that, it was still, even doing these videos and hearing from other people in the comments that they would say, "You know what, Dana, I bet that wasn't true either." Stuff that I hadn't even thought about. And then when you start again, like when something else, you realize, oh my gosh, like that wasn't true as well. In a lot of ways, you almost kind of feel like you're back at square one again with trying to figure out what is real. And it really, really messes with the person. And I think a lot of people, and I think there's a lot of like well-intended support groups out there, a lot of well-intended therapists out there, and well-intended friends and family that'll encourage person to move forward. They're like, well, just let it go. You're never going to know the whole truth. You just got to let it go. Yes, I agree with that, but it's not that simple. And I think in large part, why we do that, why there is this constant rehashing of trying to sort out what really happened, where we're caught up in playing out kind of scene by scene, was this true? Was this not true? To me, this is more of like a neurological thing than anything else. It's more of like the brain's way of trying to figure out what caused me pain, because that's the brain's primary function, right? The brain's primary function is to keep us safe. It's to keep us out of harm's way. And our brain is continually on alert for danger. When we're not in danger, our brain, it's still scanning for any potential danger, but it's not at the forefront of our mind, because we know we've experienced enough in our lives that we know what keeps us safe and what puts us in harm's way. So that part of our brain, because it's a more basic part of our brain, it's a reactive part of our brain. It's that lizard brain, the amygdala. That's the part that keeps us safe. When we experience trauma, that part goes into overdrive. So it's continually scanning, especially if it's trauma where there's not a direct cause and effect. So if somebody gets in, let's say, a car accident, it's a very normal, understandable thing that they might be terrified to drive for a while, or they might be scared to get into a car in general after that. After 9/11, a lot of people were really scared about flying. Again, very understandable cause and effect kind of related fear that's going on there. When we're in an abusive relationship of any kind, whether it's verbal, emotional, especially if it's psychological, because that kind of stuff is very, very, very covert. Most people, myself included, don't identify it as abuse oftentimes until years or even decades later, because it doesn't lead to more obvious signs. With physical abuse, you tend to have physical signs that you've been abused. It's nice in a way because you have proof. It's sort of like, here's a bruise, this really happened. And and that sounds kind of almost sick to say that, but it's validation of what you're experiencing is problematic. With psychological abuse, and I think if you ask any person that's experienced all of those different forms of abuse, the vast majority of them will say they would take the physical abuse any day of the week. It was the emotional, verbal, and psychological abuse that did the most damage, because that stuff sticks with a person for years. So, and this isn't to compare, what kind of abuse is worse. It's all awful, but they all have different kind of ripple effects and different damage that's done. But where was I going with this? Shoot, I just totally lost my train of thought. Oh, so okay. So with psychological and emotional abuse, our brain, it doesn't shut off. And so a person does tend to find themselves very hypervigilant for a very long time after that, because the brain is not linking up what caused them pain. And so what happens is kind of this PTSD type reaction to it. But then people, which is very understandable, our brain tends to link up what it thinks caused us pain. And this is when you get a lot of bizarre associations. But a lot of them, a lot of them are kind of like maybe not that far-fetched, where people are like, oh, I could see that. So this is where you get people that are saying, oh, well, I'm never going to date a redhead again, or I'm never going to date a bartender again, or I'm never going to date an attorney again, or I'm never going to date, a martial arts, mixed martial arts fighter again, or I'm never going to date an actress again. And what they're linking up is what they think caused them pain, but really it's none of those things. It's not, oh, I'm never going to date, a Catholic again or a Gemini again. It's none of those things that are causing pain. It's the problematic behavior that's the problem. But because a lot of that problematic behavior is so covert, it's so hidden, especially that psychological abuse, like that gaslighting, people don't see it. So they're not linking that up because they're not able to identify it. They're not linking up what caused them pain. So their brain is kind of having to guess and think this is what caused pain. It's also the same line of thinking where people will say, you know what, I'm just not dating anymore. Or I'm just not going to make friends with anybody anymore. And it's not dating that's the problem. It's not friends that are the problem. It's the problematic behavior that's the problem. So the more empowered we all get with, really, really what it boils down to is paying attention to how you feel. The red flags, they're helpful. They're great. I think for people to kind of sort out what is normal, what is problematic, because this stuff really, it's not taught and it's not discussed. But really the core of all that is getting in touch enough with yourself to pay attention to how you feel. So if you're feeling like something's off, if you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling tense or anxious or depressed or suspicious or resentful or angry or any of those uncomfortable emotions, all of those emotions are a sign that something is out of balance. And for you to take some sort of action to get things back into balance. So once we get better at that, then the problematic people, like as a result of that, the problematic people in our lives tend to just go away, because we get so in tune with paying attention to how we feel that, and so good at boundaries and so good at knowing what makes us feel good and in tune with what it means to feel good, that when we start experiencing gaslighting or verbal abuse or any type of snarky little comments or on any scale of problematic behavior, we immediately we distance ourselves enough to where we can evaluate the situation more clearly and then take appropriate action. So I guess that's kind of my hope, was to answer both of those questions with that. So a lot of emotional manipulators, just for Sylvie, just to clear that up, to really drive that point home, a lot of emotional manipulators will spin things around, and they will, because they are very rarely ever they're never sincerely accountable for their behavior, really, but they might give good lip service to say that they are, but their actions over time tend to point to the fact that they're not. They will blame their behavior on everybody else. So if they say a hurtful comment, if they do a hurtful action and you're not okay with that, you try to draw a boundary and say, that hurt my feelings, or I'm not okay with that. Then all of a sudden we're too emotional, we're too sensitive, we're the ones with the problem. Where again, as a normal person with a normal mindset of cooperation, who is solutions oriented, would acknowledge that and be like, oh wow, I'm really sorry that, I was joking, I took it too far, that was not my intention to hurt your feelings, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. They're not going to keep justifying their bad behavior. So whereas a narcissist or an emotional manipulator will just flat out be like, oh no, it's not my problem, it's not my fault you can't take a joke. There's no accountability there with an emotional manipulator. With a normal person, it's like, oh, I have accountability. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. Even if a normal person doesn't see things eye to eye, they will still respect that other person's boundary and realize, for whatever reason, they don't joke like that, or that's not funny to them. And they'll take steps to change, to not hurt that person in the future. And another point with that, the being overly sensitive and wondering, again, that's another one of the red flags, is they get you to introspect. And what that means is they get you to wonder if you're the problem. So if you find yourself wondering, is it them or is it me? Ask yourself, do you normally wonder about that in other situations? Because most of us don't. So, and odds are you're wondering about something very specific. You're wondering, that's really weird. I feel like this person is really icy, or that they're really pot stirring or triangulating or crazy making. Is it me or is it them? We tend to experience that confusion, which is also like, it's that really should be the first red flag in the red flag series, because confusion is always the sign of problematic behavior. It's always the first sign. It's whether or not we see it, it registers as confusion at the time, because it happens so quickly. It's just that funny feeling that something's off, and we might not even be able to pinpoint it a lot of the time. It's just that feeling like, I don't know, that's weird. When there's that feeling of confusion, to ask yourself, do I feel like this around somebody else? Jackson Mackenzie in the book Psychopath Free does such a fantastic job of explaining this concept and his solution to the concept, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And he calls it getting a constant. And in the book, he talks about his cat being his constant. For me, I needed to have my constant be a person. And in particular, like, I have a constant that's female, and then I have a constant that's male. So whenever I'm in a dating situation, I ask myself, what would my brother do? Like, how would he handle that? Because I think my brother's a really good guy. He's got good behavior. He's on the level. If I think about, would my brother do that? Or what would my brother even think of this if I were to tell him about what's going on? If he were to think it was ridiculous, then odds are it's probably ridiculous. Or do I ever wonder this about other men in my life? Like, if I encounter strange behavior from a guy, odds are no. It's that specific person. Like, I don't normally walk around wondering if, like, this guy is flirting with other women, or if he's kind of, like, doing weird things. So it's a sign. It's a sign that something's off. It's also a sign of denial. Confusion, I think, is the first sign of denial. So it's because when we deny something, we repress it. So, but it starts off as first we have to have the uncomfortable behavior that we want to suppress or repress. And it starts off as confusion. But yeah, having a constant really does help to kind of think, how would they move forward with this? How do I feel when I'm around them? Do you feel nervous and unhinged around your constant? And odds are you don't. You probably just feel that way around this certain person. Do you feel that you're crazy making behavior around other people, or is it just this person? And then that kind of answers your question as to whether or not it's you or if it's them. Because if you don't normally feel that way around other people, then it's not you. Like, you're not being overly sensitive. If you have no problem, if you're not getting your feelings hurt right and left by other people, then you're probably not overly sensitive. Or you're surrounded by a bunch of jerks. It's kind of like one or the two. But if you have somebody in your life, if you can just find somebody in your life where you're thinking, this is my constant. When I'm around them, I feel relaxed, I feel safe, I feel secure, I feel listened to, I feel heard, I feel appreciated, I feel loved, I feel safe. Have that person be your constant. And a constant, this can be a person that's living or dead. This person can be somebody, you could even pick somebody that's like fictional or real, somebody that you know in real life, or a celebrity. Like, it can be whoever you want it to be. It's more based on how you feel when you think about that person. And then let that kind of be your backup guide to moving forward with navigating the seas of behavior.
Lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this.